So my name is Sofia Arauz. I'm a general dentist. Just a little bit about myself. I graduated from Panama. That's where I'm originally from. I completed a GPR in my home country, and then I moved to the United States, where I completed an AGD at UConn. After completing my AGD, I started academia at UConn for a few years, and then I went into the industry. So the corporate industry, I worked for Sensodyne and Pernamo as their lead dentist, and now I'm working at 3D Printed as their scientific affairs director. So questions are welcome. For those of you who are joining us online, please drop your questions in the chat and we'll read them out loud. For those of you here, please feel free to ask questions. We're gonna have allocated sections for those questions. And please just make sure you clear all your doubts. So we have a packed agenda for today. That's why I was trying to get people. Basically, we're going to be introducing our company, but much more than that, we're going to introduce why it's important what we do. And we're going to talk about how is this relevant for you as a general dentist. And then Dr. Seb Kaufman, who is a prosthodontist who has been using us for quite a bit, he's going to talk about his cases and his experience and how he consults patients about aligners and some bit about practice management, so you should be finding it very useful. Now, why roots and bone matter? And the first time I thought about this question, I thought it was a funny question, because if you think about it, as general dentists, we wouldn't be asking this question in any other capacity of dentistry, right? You think about perio, you think about surgery, you think about endo, you would not dare treat that patient without knowing how the surrounding structures of the tooth and how the full anatomy of the tooth looks. So why is ortho different, right? And if you ask an orthodontist, they would say, well, we have the set, right? That's the standard of care. We do our measurements, and then we treat the patient from there. But do you know what's happening in between the set and when you actually finish that case? And let me tell you, if you ask any periodontist, for those of you who work with a periodontist, which is a lot of you, I'm guessing, just ask your perio friends. What do they see 5 to 10 years after ortho treatment? And they're gonna have the stories, I can assure you. They're gonna tell you they see bone recession, they see gum recession, and then they need to do treatment. So this is the issue, right? Because orthodontists or general dentists who are doing aligner treatment are not seeing maybe the patient 5 to 10 years afterwards. So there is a need in the dental space to change the mindset about how we treat these patients for their own safety and for our own safety too. So looks can be deceiving. If you look at this patient right here, right? This patient walks into your office, you would think, well, there's relapse, right? This patient wants aligner treatment because their teeth moved after ortho treatment a few years ago. I mean, there might be some gum recession on the lowers, but in reality, this is my opinion. Nothing really jumps out of me. I will be treating this patient, putting the patient on aligners, right, and calling it a day. Pretty easy case, straightforward. Thankfully, this patient came to a 3D Predict provider. The 3D Predict provider took a CBCT scan, took a PVS impression or a scan. We mixed it together and we gave them a 3D model of that patient. And this is what we saw. This is the starting point of this patient. Look at those dehiscence and fenestrations on this patient. Would this change your treatment plan? It would certainly change mine. I would probably not even feel comfortable treating this patient without talking to perio first. Maybe you're gonna have to have a conversation with ortho too. But much more than that, this goes to informed consent. The patient needs to know what's happening in their mouth before they take any further action. So this is a game changer. Once again, this is the usual treatment plan that you get from other aligner companies, right? You get some protraction, some retraction, nothing major in reality. But when you look at that same treatment plan, this is what's actually happening. You're taking all those roots outside of the bone. So once again, do we know where we're starting so we know where we're gonna go and we know where we're gonna end up? That's crucial in everything in dentistry and specifically in ortho. The other reason why roots and bone matter is stability. Think about it. If you take a tooth outside of the bone and you dehiscence the root, they're gonna wanna rebound. They're gonna wanna relapse into a more healthy position, okay? Even though they may be crowded, they're inside of their anatomical boundaries. So if you want a stable treatment, you need to respect the anatomical boundaries of your patients. It just makes sense. And that's what you saw there is actually a CBCT that we took at the last step compared to the last step, to 1.5 year CBCT. So you can see it's the same thing. So how does this relate to 3D Predict, right? And how 3D Predict is different from anything else that is outside of the market? And I want to start with talking about AI because 3D Predict is all about artificial intelligence. And that's a buzzword today. Everybody uses it. There has been an explosion. The ADA is talking about it, having all these events about it. So I want you to see this picture and just think about what you see. Just for 3 seconds. Now, some of you may have seen a vase, right, in black. Some of you may have seen 2 faces looking at each other in white. The thing is that you are not gonna see both at the same time until I just told you about it. You're gonna see one, and then maybe you're gonna see 2 because I mentioned. AI sees the whole picture every single time. So the thing about AI is that even though there has to be a human at the end of the whole protocol to check the results, AI is gonna do all the calculations, right? All the measurements. They're gonna see all the anatomical boundaries of the patient, do the CBCT segmentation that will take you hours to do, just in 5 minutes, even less. So when you get that result in your laptop, you know that you're getting the thousands of cases of CBCT that we have in our database compound for your case. So you are able to then check the treatment plan, which is what you should be doing instead of segmenting the CBCT and trying to put everything together. Now, the main issue here, besides safety, which I think it has been very well established, right, about the dehiscence and fenestration, is also, we think about ortho, and we all know, right, orthodontists or general dentists who do aligner treatment tell patients, this is gonna take a year, and it never takes a year. It always a year and a half, 2 years, you're still in aligners, you're doing all this refinement, changing attachments, trying to figure out what's happening, and the patient is just upset, right? Why refinements happen? Refinements happen because, once again, if you don't know where you're starting, you don't know where you're going, and you don't know what the end result is gonna be. So because 3D Predict takes into consideration the whole anatomy of your patient, the whole ortho anatomy of your patient, that's how I like to call it. So crown, root, and surrounding structures, refinements are less than 1 per case. And it takes you only 6 visits to complete a case. So why is 6 visits important? Because that's money that you're losing for every visit. You're not charging the patient more when you're seeing them 8, 10, 12 more visits, right? You are making the same amount of money. You are using that chair time that you could be using for other patients on that same patient. So this is why it's important. Now, AI in 3D Predict just solves this issue completely. It's an ecosystem of clear aligner treatment solutions. So the way it works, and I'm going to explain it to you a little bit on that video for those of you who don't know about 3D printing, is we take into consideration the real roots and bone of your patients. And I know other companies, for the sake of being transparent, right, they do show you CBCT. That has been a release last year. The difference is that we show you the real roots every single time. So our algorithms have been developed since 2014. We were actually the first ones to do this with CBCT. What that means is that they're much more advanced than anything else that is out there in the market. With other companies, when you get a delacerated canine, their algorithms can't handle it and they show you one root. So what's the point then of using this, right? If you are just gonna be replacing complex anatomy with roots from a book, it really defies the purpose. See, with 3D Predict, you're never gonna have this issue. Now, for those of you who don't have a CBCT, you may be asking, well, what's the relevancy for me, right? For my practice, I don't use CBCT. Once again, that's where the other part of AI comes in. Because we have treated thousands of CBCT cases since 2014, we have a database of average of the width of the cortical plate, average of the anatomical boundaries of the housing, right, of the teeth, but average of the root anatomy. So all that goes into our AI and feeds the AI. So even if you don't submit a CBCT and you just submit a BVS impression or a scan, you're gonna get a much more accurate, right, predictable, which is our name, treatment plan than with anybody else out there. So we are great at customer service. You will see this when you start working with us. And we also are manufacturing in the US. We're fully FDA approved. We're manufacturing in California, so you don't have to be worrying, oh, where my aligner is coming from. Is this gonna take a long time, right? You are gonna get your aligners in time because we have fast delivery times because they're here. So this is how it works. You get your regular crown module. If you don't submit a CBCT, this is all you're gonna get. It's still gonna be more predictable, but this is all you're gonna get because we believe in reality, right? We're not gonna show you the roots in the book. But if you submit a CBCT with your PVS impression or your dental scan, then you're gonna get a bone module, which tells you the width of the cortical plate starting from the root surface. So red is less width, blue is more width. At every step of the treatment plan, you're gonna see how the width is affected. And also, you're gonna get a root module, which tells you how the real roots of your patients move step by step. Why is this important? I mean, roots can be very close, right? Maybe the maxillary sinus is on the way. You know how many times the sterilization doesn't take place because you are bumping into the maxillary sinus and you just don't know? And then you are keeping the patient on the aligners 7 more months and the sterilization still is not taking place because the maxillary sinus is not going anywhere. Or maybe you're bumping into one root into the other, and then what are you gonna do? Nothing is gonna happen, nothing is gonna move. That's why this information is crucial for you to achieve the results you want. Now let's talk about a little bit about credibility, right? Because we can say anything we want until we're blue in the face, but this is what really establishes how credible we are. At the beginning of this year, Google actually reached out to us because they saw our technology and they wanted to establish a partnership with us. So we're gonna be talking about a little bit about that more in the next slide. But that says a lot about how different we are and how established our technology is. And also we have been recognized by Digital Health New York as one of the most innovative health startups of New York. That was this year too. Also, just unrelated, right, to what I just said, we just launched our new generation of deep CBCT analysis. So you remember how I said that we have less than one refinement per case, and we can finish treatment in 6 visits or less. That was with the old iteration of deep CBCT analysis. The new one just launched, which has double the accuracy for patient anatomy, including bone, and even higher predictability. So we are just hoping to collect data as soon as possible to see how predictable this is actually going to be. This is going to be a game changer for us and for you and your patients. So right now, we can finish a case in just 6 visits. For example, this case, think about it. And Dr. Kaufman is going to honor us by discussing this case a little further. But see, collapse occlusion on posterior, what are you going to do? Are you going to crown those upper teeth? I mean, is that the best outcome right now for that patient, the best course, treatment course? In reality, it is. Because until 3D Predict came around, there was really no other option because intrusion is very hard to accomplish. And unless you refer this patient to an ortho and you hope for the best for intrusion, because even then it's very unpredictable, you are not gonna get intrusion. But see, we actually got 2.5 millimeters of intrusion, and this was in 4 months. So now you can make space for your crowns and actually do the patient a service by keeping their other teeth intact, which is what we're taught, all of us are taught in dental school. So with Google, we're actually gonna work on our treatment plan software. So we just launched Deep CBCT, which is all about more accurate anatomy. But with Google, we're actually gonna have access to the proprietary AI. They have given us access to that nobody else has access to. So we can actually improve our treatment planning software. So I can't wait to see how this is gonna look. We're all so excited to be working with them because if I was thinking this was revolutionizing the industry before, I can't imagine what's gonna happen in a few months. So how is this relevant for you as a dentist? And you might have already put this together yourself, right? With intrusion. Just talking about intrusion, which is the focus of our conversation today. And we can talk about any other movement whenever you want. We can come and chat about it, but let's just focus on this because intrusion is very difficult, like I said. It has been proven in the literature that antagonist is true almost 90% of the time after the loss of a molar. You see it every day in your practice. I don't need to tell you this. I don't need to show you studies on this. So what are your options? Crown, root canal, right? Enameloplasty if it's not that bad, right? So how do you treat these cases? What do you do? Intrusion was really not an option for a general dentist up until now because intrusion, this is what was required. Mini screws, pads, okay. Rubber bands. In posterior, you needed to do in palatal and buccal. And then the patient needs to change those rubber bands at least 3 times per day. Is the patient going to be compliant? Most likely not. Any ortho will tell you that. With 3D Predict, you can achieve up to 3 millimeters of intrusion with none of this, just the aligners. So remember the case I just showed you, that was 2.5 millimeters, that was plenty. And we all know that in dentistry, 1 millimeter is a lot. So this solves a lot of the issues for you and your patient. Also, I want to establish that, once again, AI is just as good as the people that are at the back end checking it, right? So AI is great, but you can be certain that all of your cases are gonna be reviewed by an orthodontist before they get to you. Actually, we're very proud to say that most of our techs, I think there's only one who is actually a tech. All the rest of our techs are either general dentists or orthodontists themselves. Our chief of techs is actually an orthodontist. you are always gonna have a treatment plan that is clinically sound and feasible, which is not what you get with anybody else. And like I said, pretty great ranges for intrusion. So now I just want to establish a little bit why intrusion is so difficult, right? And you may not hear anybody else talking about biomechanics, but biomechanics is what makes orthotech, to put it that way. Intrusion is difficult because you need to know where the apex is to be able to place the vector of force to direct the force to that apex. If you don't know where the apex is, if you don't know the anatomy of that tooth, it's a guesstimation. And then refinements, more time, more visits, more chair time for you. Now, when you're talking about intrusion for anterior teeth, it's not pure intrusion, right? It's not just a vertical movement up and down. It's actually a torque intrusion, right? Because you need to get that angulation of those anterior teeth right. Torque is very difficult. Ask any ortho, they will tell you it's complicated. And when you need to mix it with intrusion, it becomes a nightmare. Why is torque complicated? Because you need to know the center of resistance of the tooth. How do you calculate the center of resistance of the tooth? By the length of the root. If you don't know the length of the root, you don't know what their center of resistance is. And where do you place the force? Once again, guesstimation. With treated per egg, you don't have any of those questions. You know exactly where to place the force. We know exactly where to place the force. So now the question is, you're gonna hear anybody else talk about how great their attachments are, how great their, I don't know, their torque controllers are, or their bike ramps, or their plastic, or their cut. Yes, that's great with treated per egg. But that comes from this information. It's not the opposite way. We just didn't one day say, well, we're gonna place these attachments this way and we're gonna make 20 different shapes to make your life difficult so you can't polish them, right? We actually, since we know the anatomy, we know exactly what we need to make this case work. And we actually only have 4 shapes of attachments because we have run studies internally that say that's all you need. So this is the proof is in the pudding, right? So this is actually the last step of the treaty plan. In the middle, you have the CBCT post-treatment, and that's a video of how we predicted the treaty plan ran. So you can see they look the same. This is how you know that case track. This is how you know treaty predict is predictable. It's not only the crown. Where are those roots? That's important. This is the same case. Look at this class 2 division 2. What a difference for this patient. This case took 7 months. 7 months to change the smile of this patient, to treat this bite. Right? In 7 months, we got 2.5 millimeters torque intrusion, and we finished this case. Once again, you combine the torque, you combine pure intrusion, you get torque intrusion, which is what's needed to treat this case predictable and efficiently and fast and get more chair time for other patients. Tipping is important too. And although this presentation is not about tipping, we're talking about the relevancy for your general practice, right? Look at this. How are you gonna make space for that implant? You're gonna have to make a crown on this tooth. Maybe you wanna extract it, I don't know. It's up to you. Now you can put that tooth back in an anatomically more correct position in only 4 months and just place your implant. I mean, that patient is gonna love you. There's no other way around it. Because in reality, if you tell a patient this is only gonna take 4 months and we don't need to cut this other tooth, they're gonna want that over a crown. So any questions before we go into our case studies? Any questions online? Well, perfect. So, Dr. Kaufman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sophia. I usually don't work with a micro again, so. This one too? Both? All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Sophia. She's not only the person that told you about all this wonderful stuff, she's also the one that runs the numbers for me for my cases, so I can see and be happy with my result. Let's move on a little bit here. So I'll give you a little bit about my background so you understand. It scares me to say that I've been seeing patients for literally 30 years. So I finished dental school back in 1994. I was going to be an orthodontist. Always liked ortho. I worked for an orthodontist for 3 years. I can put brackets on a person faster than anybody you know. Okay, and I can put them on, take them off, and I can do it really, really well. And I understood the mechanics, and I was in the honors program and everything else. And life steers me towards pros and implants. And I've been placing implants and restoring them for over 25 years. And I have some of my students actually from NYU in the audience here, which is great. Thank you for showing up. So the question is, why am I talking to you about ortho? Because what I do is pros and implants. Well, to me, doing pros and implants without placing the teeth in the right position and location is a bit meaningless. Because if I, as you saw in the case before, if I try and place an implant when the molar behind that implant is so tilted, number one, I don't have enough room. Number two, I would have to prepare a crown that will not have a line of draw. Number three, I'll have a pseudo pocket periodontally mesial to that second molar, and we will constantly have problems. So I started dabbling in ortho, and as soon as another aligner company, the most famous one, came out, I obviously started using them. And I've been featured in their shootout a few years back, and I try and do cases that my orthodontists won't do. Reason being is because they don't understand the process and the implants that are involved with it, and I end up having to control the case. That's why I'm here today. So the statistic that the antagonists extrude 90% of the time after a loss of a molar, we all know this. I mean, you don't have to practice that long. If you've been in practice for 2 to 3 years, you know that if you extracted a first molar, the second molar will drift. It just will. It will tilt in. Not only that, the second premolar will tilt in back, and the contacts between the first and the second premolar are going to loosen up. And you're always going to have a food impaction area. This is treatment. If you look at this, if you know anything about the VIX Win system, this is the phosphor plate system with the little, not this one. You see the little tabs here on the x-rays? That's the old drum scanner, which you guys don't even know what I'm talking about. But I did this at about the turn of the century, probably around, I don't know, 2000 or so. And in order to achieve a proper plane of occlusion, and unfortunately I don't have the originals here, but you can see that actually, you know what, I'm gonna walk around because I don't want to slow the slides. But you see what happens with the bone here? You see the angle? Look at this. The first molar extruded so far that it took the bone with it, in here too. So what I actually had to do is do root canals. Yes, I did those myself, believe it or not. And then I stopped. And I haven't done one since. And I actually had to make crowns to level this up in order for me to put the bridges in. And that was the only way for us to handle extrusion. And once I started trying to do that orthodontically, this is what we had to do. Whether you did it with aligners or you did it with real ortho appliances, you actually had to work really, really hard to open up the spaces. And one of the reasons I quit doing ortho is because as a prosthodontist, for me to bracket somebody and do all this was just way too much. So I stopped. But with Invisalign at the time and aligners in general, said, wait a second, all I have to do is take an impression. Well, I'm a prosthodontist. I'm an expert at taking impressions, even though I haven't taken one in probably like 7 years at this point. But I could take a good impression. It was a natural. And today, with scanning, it's a no-brainer. We don't even have impression material in the office anymore at this point. So if you look at this particular case that Sophia alluded to, you can see that we had a 25-year-old patient with a treatment time of 9.5 months. I mean, this is quick. Take a look at the space that opened up. And if you ever had to make a short crown on a tooth, you know the difficulty. First of all, you finally will make the crown, but then the patient will come back to you saying that the crown came off, or it'll be so thin that it would break. As a matter of fact, it's funny, things work out in life, very interesting. My first patient today, I actually had to deliver a crown on tooth number 2. Now, this is a young man, I think he's 30, and the original treatment plan was 2 gold crowns for number 2 and number 15, and 2 PFMs for number 18 and 31. Sounds common. He is a severe, severe clencher, and he breaks everything. So within a year or so, he went through the gold, wore it out. I said, okay, let's make zirconia crowns, right? Stronger. Of course. He broke the zirconia crowns. He chipped the ceramics of the lower PFMs because there's just not enough room. So the last thing that I did now is I did rotary crown lengthening. I took a nice burr, a millimeter wide with a round tip, and I went in and trimmed through the sulcus to a point where I could get a finish line that's 3-4 millimeters deep. Yes, it's violating biologic width, but what's my other choice? This is nicer. This is easier. This is more predictable. So again, if you never had that experience, you don't want to. I don't mind placing tags and little implants and all this. It's just so much work for a very minimal return, really. Not only that, bottom line is somebody has to pay for it. So either you or your patient, because somebody. I want you to look at a case we just finished almost everything. And this is a physician. She showed up to my office. She was younger before we did this. I think the last I checked, I think she showed up to my office when she was 33. She had a periapical area over number 13. I took it out, placed an implant, and put a provisional on it, and everything healed nice. And then we started talking about what to do with the fact that her smile is canted. Now, it's hard. I'm very close. Can you see the cant in her smile? There we go. Now, without the light, you can see that better. And I have plenty of patients that show up. They had orthodontics before, or they didn't, and they have that. And they don't quite know what can be done, because when I asked her, well, would you want to do something about the fact that it's not even? She goes, wait a second, you can do something about it? I said, yeah, we can. So she has mandibular crowding. And the number one thing that I look at every time is, and if you looked at the slide of the CBCT that Sophia showed you, if you notice that up here anteriorly, where you had the dehiscence and the fenestration, at the same time, posteriorly, where the premolars are, it was all green. Because typically you get an omega arch. I don't know why that is. Developmentally, there's a great book called Breath or Breathe? Breathe. I was confused. It's, read the book. It's actually good. It'll teach you that we actually breathe way too much. So breathe slower. But because of the Industrial Revolution, millions of years of genetic development condensed into a few hundred years. We don't have rough food anymore. We don't exercise our jaws properly. I'm not talking about clenching, I'm talking about using the jaws. And a lot of our clientele, patients, friends, family, everybody ends up with constricted arches. And we see an omega arch or an arch that is toed in quite frequently. To me, when I see that, I jump for joy because that means that I can expand. And the reason I'm quote unquoting myself is because, yes, I understand. I have no delusions of grandeur. I cannot open the mid-palatine suture and move it to the sides. Impossible. Well, I mean, unless you want to do surgery. You want to do some distraction osteogenesis, go for it. I was one of the original students at NYU in the implant department that we were experimenting with that stuff. And if you really want to try it, go ahead. There's not too many patients that will take you up on it. But tipping the teeth out, and now with 3D predicts technology of torquing the roots in, will create that U-shaped arch that you want to create. So when I see that, I say to myself, well, the truth, I don't even have to do a Bolton's analysis. I know that if I expand the maxillary arch, the mandibular arch will follow. We're going to have upright premolars, and that crowding you see on the lower anteriors will resolve. And there's quite a few companies that do this stuff that their go-to is IPR, in proximal reduction. And if you've ever done IPR on lower anteriors, you would grow to hate it as much as I do. Because all of a sudden you're lowering the contact point. And if that patient had a black triangle, that's fine. That's actually going to look better. But most of them don't have the black triangle. And now you lower the contact point, you put the teeth together, and they have these hyperplastic papillae. So to me, expansion is first. Let's take a look at what we did for her. So you can see the cant and the smile. And that was the treatment plan. And I want to thank Sophia again for running the numbers on this because it was great. I just did another scan. I sent her the scan. I said, do it. I don't have to do any homework. But if you take a look, we actually managed to intrude number 9, 10, 11, 1.5 millimeters. That's insane. That's a lot. Number 26 intruded 2 millimeters. And the lower anterior is 1 millimeter. And then I used nothing else. That's it. Yes, I rounded off the chips on the anteriors, but that's it. And if you see number 13 didn't move, but you see now number 13 is actually inwards. And that's why I didn't do the final crown, because I was waiting to finish. I'll let you look at that because, I mean, there's no need to describe it, just easier to see it. So again, we got 1 millimeter of intrusion and 8 degrees of torque for the upper anteriors. That's a lot. And that's a magnificent result. Take a look at the final. This is the before and after. And this is done quite rapidly. There it is. One of my favorite cases till now. We just wrapped this up. The reason you see attachments on the lower right is because the coup de grace here is that we are actually mesializing the premolars and the molars. We're bringing them in. And that's like the last 7 trays or whatever. So this is initial is right now, this is 21. No, I think, what do we have, 23? Two more trays, right? Yeah. So it's funny. You know my case is better than me. Go ahead. I'll just put that. But take a look at that. It's a tremendous result. And you know what's interesting is when you do orthodontics, your patients don't see it because they're going through it. It's like watching your kids grow, and all of a sudden, 20 years later, you're like, oh my God. And I'll tell the people that are skeptical, I always say, well, if you can, the problem is that we have attachments on. So if the attachments haven't changed, I say, you know what, go back 10 trays, try it on. You can't put them on. Impossible. But the biggest result here, when you actually do an expansion, quote unquote expansion, and put the bite in the right place, this is what happens. And I started noticing this years ago when I've done my first case like this. Take a look what happens to the chin. You get a proper vertical. You have the nasal labial fold actually resolves itself. And right here, the mentalis actually relaxes, and you get a much, look, this looks collapsed. This looks much more natural. And you're not going to believe it till you actually do it and you see it. So there's a couple of things. If you want to take some pearls, and I see a lot of fresh faces here, when you take photos, take a protrusive. Tell your patient, close, take your front, side, and then say, move your teeth edge to edge. And then take a picture. It'll show them what's going on with the lower teeth. Because when your patients close, they'll close like this. They don't close like we do. We close till we have maximal intercuspation. The patients close like this. No, close on your back teeth. Well, okay. So take a protrusive. Second, don't forget to take your side shot. Because I have cases that I did that years ago and I don't have a good lateral to compare. See that? I forgot you have arrows there for me. I was going to get finals on him, but our schedule changed right before, so you'll get to see almost the final. So it's a 26-year-old male, and we did 15 steps on the upper, 30 on the lower, again, because we're moving the molars. And he's actually ahead of 11 at this point. He's closer to the finish, but his maxilla is actually done. But here he's on stepping level. And his issue was that he was shopping and comparing. So he went to, I won't name any names, but he went to one of those, smile shops where you walk in and they take photos and there's some remote orthodontist to do this and whatever. Listen, it's great, but you're trying to come out of the situation as rapidly as you can. And because their business model is volume, they do either what Sophia showed you before, where it's just moving things haphazardly, or they will go ahead and do IPR. And this is not an IPR case. This is an expansion case. Again, a class 2 division 2. You know the old Melody Griffith? You guys don't even know who that is, right? Oh, I'm dating myself. See, there's one old guy smiling in the back. Yeah, it's great. But his other complaint was actually the buccal corridors. You see, they're very, very large. There's a lot of space here. And he didn't like that. He wanted a broader smile. And the biggest barrier was trying to tell him that, yes, you get what you pay for because there's a reason why I am more expensive than the smile shop. And I don't remember exactly what sold him on it, but he said, I think he read reviews, he spoke to some people, whatever. It says, I want to. I said, all right, let's go. So you can see what happens in the class 2 div 2. One of the problems here is that this patient, as he grows older, he will grind his upper centrals because they're just so locked in that the only thing he can do is sit and do this at night. And trying to make a night guard for him is actually hard because the teeth are not parallel, so you don't even have a line to draw. So we went ahead and came up with a treatment plan. You see what happens. We're intruding the lower anteriors and the uppers and torquing. So take a look. This is 1 through 11. No additional appliances. This is where he is right now. Take a look at the before and step 11. We're not finished. I don't have the finals for you yet. But again, take a look at the fuller smile. And the first thing he said to me when he actually finally saw this, because he didn't comprehend what happened, because we went quite quickly. And when I showed him the picture, and if you've been to my office, there's a couple of people that know my setup. I have a 32-inch flat TV behind my desk, and it's connected to my computer, so we can throw pictures back and forth. So what I do is I go in and I put the before on the left side and the after on the right, and we can actually stand in the door of my office far enough away where you can actually look at this, and the pictures are closer. They're really close. And at that point, there's a wow moment. Because when you look at that, you say to yourself, oh my God, wow. And that was his reaction. That was my reaction too, because this was a surprise to me as well. Because I didn't take any pictures as we go along. I see him every time. He's tracking, meaning I see the teeth in the aligners. They're moving correctly. Everything's great. What do I know? That's what happens. Take a look at the close-ups. Look at the deep bite situation that you had at the beginning. And look at where we are right now. Like I said, we're not done. And I'll give you another little tip. How many of you do aligner therapy in your office? I'm not going to ask you who you use, because the chances are using, the biggest one. But here's the thing. I've had cases where, and again, I'll give you the other 2 pearls today. We'll go over that again later, but might as well tell you now. I get a patient a couple of weeks back from another state, and 3D Predict asked me to review and take a look at the treatment plan. So I called up the office, the doctor's office, and I got the manager, and she says, oh, he was horrible. He wouldn't comply. We put on the attachments, and then he wouldn't wear them. We had to grind everything off. So now we don't know what to do. We polished the teeth and he's done, but we don't know what to do. And the first question I had was, did you put the attachments the first day you saw the patient? Yeah, of course, we do that. Guys, a long time ago, I discovered that in order to learn how to do something, you have to go through a gradient. You got to start slow and small, right? My assistant, Daniela, is here, 2nd year dental school. You ready to place an implant yet or no? Start small, okay? A composite filling? Yeah, right? Start small. Your patients are just like that. Long time ago, I started placing attachments on the 2nd or the 3rd tray. Reason being is because I used to tell the patient, well, we're going to put these attachments on your teeth, and then we're all going to stand there laughing with you, not at you. As you struggle in the mirror, and do yourself a favor, get big mirrors in your office, not this, okay? Because you need both hands to learn how to handle these things. So get a big mirror, get the patient out of the chair, have him take the aligners in and out. And would literally sit there for 15 minutes, watch people struggle. If you ever had it in your mouth, you know how difficult it is. It's hard to get retainers in and out sometimes. So can you imagine you have buttons, you have those attachments on your teeth? Wait till the patient has 2 weeks under their belt. Because at that point, when you tell them, let me see how your teeth are doing, they'll do this. And they'll be able to actually do it with their tongue. Well, some people can actually do it with their tongue. They get to be that good. I could when I did mine. But if you put attachments on, they won't be able to. So I get this patient, I finally saw him. The guy has an open bite that needs to be closed, about 5 millimeters worth of open bite. I don't know if I would do this. And I bite I buy big cases. So they went and put all the attachments on. Of course, he's not going to be able to use it. The other little tip that I have for you is, and that's hard because I'll tell you the argument against it, which is ridiculous to me, but as soon as we're done with the movement, I want my attachments off. So if I have a case where I'm running 10 trays on the top and 15 trays on the bottom, if I'm done in 10 trays on top, the attachments will go on the second visit, and they will come off on the 10th. And at that point, I'm gonna run quote unquote retainers till we're done. The reason being is because there's absolutely no reason for your patient to walk around with these things on their teeth. It's harder on the hygiene, and the biggest thing to me is getting a win. You know the win, the W? Everybody wants a win. I never have a patient walk out of my office without teeth. And as soon as the attachments have served their purpose, they're coming off. I don't want to see them. Now, the funny thing is that the argument against it is, well, if they take the attachments off, they won't pay their bill. You heard that, right? It's the same people that told you in dental school, don't make beautiful provisionals because the patient won't come back for the final crown. I have never, ever made an ugly provisional. The provisional has to be stellar. As a matter of fact, I have had a problem all my professional careers that the patients come back and say, you know, I really like your provisionals better. And that's the problem, trying to get my ceramics to match the provisionals. If you're having a problem, have people paying you, you're running your practice incorrectly. Provisionals have to be beautiful, but guess what? When I put a provisional on, case is done. I tell it to the patient, I'm giving you a provisional today. As far as I'm concerned, notice, I didn't say temporary. Life is temporary. Okay? A provisional. I'm giving you a provisional today. As far as I'm concerned, I'm done with the work because I scanned you, I gave you a provisional. The only thing I have to do is substitute the plastic provisional with the final ceramic crown. That's all. Do I have to be paid today? Yes, you do. Because last time I went to buy a suit, right? You don't have the suit. They'll hem the suit. They'll tailor it. You have to pay for it. I'm right across the street from Bloomingdale's. I tell them, do me a favor, walk across the street and buy a suit and get alterations. See if they'll take the payment when you're done. That's it. Your ortho cases should be paid off when you put the attachments on. So as far as I'm concerned, if you're introducing an orthodontic case, I charge a fee up front to do all the planning. For photos, for a 3D scan, for a CBCT, the patient pays for that. You can apply it towards the final treatment or not. I usually do. It's part of the final. And then when we're ready to go and the patient approves it, they have to pay the balance to bring it to about 60%. In order for me to process and actually pay 3D Predict. Am I matching this? In order for me to process and actually pay 3D Predict, so they will manufacture the aligners for me. Because at that point, it's done. They're paid. Everything is finished. When they come back, the other half is due. And if you want to break it down further, do it when you deliver the first set of aligners. Do another 30%, and the last 20 or whatever when they get the attachments done. That avoids the problems. And it avoids missed appointments as well because they already paid for it. Guess what? If you pay for something, you're going to show up to the appointment. All right. So, and that's as far as practice management is concerned. But in any case, look at the result that we got. It's really, really cool to see this. Take a look at the arch form. So not only did we expand, but we actually torqued the roots of 8 and 9. Take a look at the spaces that we made for the canines. And you see this at step 11, we are mesializing the premolars. We're bringing everything in. We're closing the spaces. We're almost done. I'm sorry that I couldn't have the finals for you. You literally canceled or had to change the appointment last week before we finished putting things together. If you want to spend a little time looking at the numbers, you'll see that, and again, Sophia did a beautiful job putting this together for me, but you can see that we had pure intrusion and torque of 8, 9, of 1 millimeters and 20 degrees. And this was done very, very quickly. So a lot of my cases, I'll tell the patient, well, we'll do it in a year and we're done in 6 months because we're putting the forces in the right direction. Look at that. On the lower, the same thing. We have tremendous expansion in the molars. I mean, the lower molars, 4 millimeters of product. That's quite a bit. And we actually put the teeth in vertical. Take a look at the video. Look at that. What an amazing result. Before we go on to the next one, so you can see what you can get here. And I can't wait to finish this because I'm dying to show the finals because it looks really, really cool. But that's where we are. Let's go on to the next one. So a 47-year-old patient came to me, and when I looked at it, I said, well, she's being treated by an orthodontist. There's an orthodontist. And the orthodontist listened to her chief complaint and said, okay, let's straighten the lower teeth. Fine. Let's straighten the lower teeth. But take a look at the smile. We can all see the cant. Now, I don't know if you'd notice it on an attractive woman or not, but I was looking at that. And this was the Invisalign plan. And take a look. Sophia, is this going to start moving? There it is. Look how long this is taking. There's 33 steps. And we're slowly, slowly moving. Look how many attachments there are. And look at the final result. Again, let it run. Look what happens with the final result here. We have a complete open bite. And we still have a cant. You see that? So I said, no, let's do something different. And we had one clean check. I called the orthodontist. I said, listen, I don't want to do this. Can you just run it again, see if you can tilt it, whatever. So they ran it again, and they're getting exactly the same thing. Basically, their final is my initial photo. And maybe the business model is wrong. When you're treating a lot of children, it's hard to concentrate on an adult because I do adult orthodontics and it's not, oh, let's just straighten and move on to the next one. No, it's nitpicky little things. That's what happens. So this is a second permutation of the aligners. 24 aligners to get a result. And we're still not thrilled. Yes, I asked her if she wants to take the wisdom tooth. There's an oral surgeon in the crowd here. And I know that's what she's thinking. Yes, I asked. No, she doesn't want to. She's attached to it. So naturally, you can see that I wasn't crazy about it. But now, take a look at my actual treatment plan. 16 aligners. And if you look, the first thing that we work on is expansion. Look what we're doing to the upper arch. And look what we're doing to the lower arch. And once you get the expansion, you can see what's going to happen to the teeth. And towards the end, when we finally made room, we're going to lower the number 11 canine into position. Now we're going to over-erupt it because the shape of it is a little too sharp. She's got a little fang there. So we're going to go ahead and trim that afterwards. Yes. Okay, so question for you, what does healthy mean? Exactly. The question that I have is because I hear this all the time. We hear people talk about it. There's words that are platitudes, and there are words that actually pertain to it. It's like how many times have a patient go, "Is this really bad?" Uh, Bad in relation to what? I mean, getting run over by a car? No, it's not that bad. I mean, I don't know what you're comparing it to. Um, it's there's there's the AI algorithm at this point in the general dental community. Forget about 3D Predicts or Google. Like the database that we have as professionals with dentistry is so huge that at this point, the 3D Predict AI knows how quickly the tooth would move. All I need is at about an average number. I mean, we're dealing with, we're all pretty much kind of the same animal, you know? Yeah. So here's the thing. This is why, personally, you guys remember Bright Smile? Where are they? Oh, okay. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I know, but where are they? Like they were the greatest thing. So there's a couple of my students from the implant department and why you are here, and they will tell you exactly, why I keep telling them all the time. If something is so great, it'll stick around. It'll still be here. Okay, so things disappear. But the human anatomy is the same for years. And the fact that you can't do ortho in a yuck mouth, we've known it for years. I won't do ortho on somebody who's periodontally involved to begin with. So before, if a patient comes into your office, and it's like this young woman that has immaculate home care, doesn't have a speck of calculus in her mouth, great, I'll do ortho, no problem. The only thing that I can do is get the periodontal condition better because the teeth are going to be in a better position. On the other hand, if I have somebody who is iffy, I see a lot of gingivitis, I see a lot of issues, they will benefit from ortho because then the teeth would be straighter and then they can clean better. So, it's like the chicken or the egg, right? But I will do ortho before they get a hygiene and before they go through at least a cycle. I want them. My hygienist is got her own hygiene department. I told her, she said, we're expecting her to deliver a baby since Sunday, and I'm still like calling, it's like, where's your baby? But she's at maternity leave now. But when I hired her, I told her, I said, listen, this is your hygiene department. I'm not going to micromanage you. As a matter of fact, I don't want to know how many times a patient comes in. I don't want to know whether they come in every 2, 3, 4, 6 months. The only thing that I want to know is that when I come over to check, I have an immaculate result. So when somebody wants to do ortho, you must have them on oral care. I have, unfortunately, a couple of young ladies in my practice that one of them, ortho was discontinued because her oral hygiene was so horrendous that we started getting those class 5, the cervical lesions all over. We ended up doing partial composite veneers on a 15-year-old girl. Breaks my heart. And well, she didn't want to brush. It's her fault or the parents' fault. You know whose fault it is? You know, I'm not going to blame the dentist, but I can tell you that if that patient walks into my office and they have that load of plaque on, they're not doing ortho anymore. At that point, wires come off. They go back to their dentist, their general dentist, prosthodontist, periodontist, whoever is taking care of them, and the hygiene has to be gotten to a point where we can continue. Because on a child, what you're going to get is decalcification of enamel. On an adult, you're going to start having periodontitis. And then you have like that story in the news, with the person that was using one of those external appliances and moved the teeth out of the envelope of bone. Did you heard that? I'm having people that are close to me tell me, oh my God, I don't want to do ortho because you can push the teeth all the way out of my mouth. They're going to end up out here. Like, no, it's uncontrolled movement by people that really shouldn't have done what they've done. So you can see the treatment plan here. And this is one of those things that I really like to do because look what happens to the centrals. They're going to cant over. The canine will pull back. It's going to end up here, right there. And at that point, I'm going to trim that and make it even with the other side. So take a look at the chief complaint. This was the Invisalign correction that we ran again. I'm sorry, the cant correction. So we ran that. You can see what was done. I did have to IPR 2 spots. I'm sorry, the Invisalign had to IPR 2 spots, and you can compare that. I was confused when I look at it. Take a look at what happens. Well, we did no IPR. Do it again. Because they didn't do this. Again, take a look at the difference. This just brings the teeth out. Look at what we did with 3D Predict. We actually, those purple dots are the torque. That's pressing the roots back in. And that allows us to do that without bringing the teeth out of the envelope of bone. And again, if you have a CAT scan, you can do it. I did this without a CAT scan because, look, I've done this for a while. It's no matter what you're going to do, if you torque them in, you're actually going to improve the situation. So it's a no-brainer. I don't need a CAT scan to tell me how to improve it. So if you want to run it, that's fine. The other thing is I want you to compare the number of attachments that you see. And there's mechanics are, I guess, are everything in ortho. And one of the things that I really liked about Invisalign was that it was scalloped around the teeth. Not shrimp, but scallop. Okay? I teach the international program. One of my residents came back to me and says, Dr. Kaufman, what was that shrimp between the teeth you were talking about? I said, no, not shrimp, scallop. But, and I really like that. And I got to tell you, for bleaching trays, it's wonderful. But for movement, you're taking away all the power in the tray. And the 3D Predict tray actually comes around here at the gingiva. And that gives you a lot of force. So you don't have to have all these crazy attachments. I mean, I used to hate this because if you put attachments on teeth, you know how hard it is to get all these composite things into the nooks and crannies, put it on, and then if you didn't dry the tooth enough, you'll take it off and it'll pop off. And then you have to put it again. It's such a pain. So with 3D Predict, what I do like is, see those aqua, what was that? Is that aqua? Teal? Is it aqua? If you look at those aquas, those are the attachments. And basically you have 2 directions, horizontal and vertical. That's it. And look at when we put them on. You see the attachments on number 10 and 11 don't show up till tray 10. But that's where we are. And that's why I personally started using the system, because the idea made sense to me. And then when I started using it, I really, really liked it. So that's what it is. So you can see that we had 1 millimeter of lower anterior intrusion in 4 months. That moves fairly quickly. We had the cant improvement already. This is where this patient is right now. Okay. So we did an asymmetrical expansion, as you can see, and we intruded the teeth. And now I'm just, right now, she's on tray 12 or 13, I think 13. And I'm waiting to see in the next 3 trays for number 10 and 11 to end up in the correct position. Take a look at the difference right now. You can see it already. And you can see that you can see more teeth on the left side. And the buccal corridors are expanding. And I can't wait for the final photos. So how do you talk to your patients about aligners? Because not everybody wants to get them, and people say, well, how do I sell this to a patient, right? Well, I don't sell anything. The only thing I need to sell the patient is me. That's it. Just so for your information, practice management 101. You're not selling dentistry. You're selling yourself. We can all do dentistry. Some a little better, some a little worse, some improve, some don't improve, some stay where they are, some get to be absolutely amazing, but we do dentistry. Selling dentistry is not your job. You need to sell yourself to the patient. Dentistry is a matter of trust. If the patient trusts you, you don't have to sell them anything. All you have to do is show them. Now, well, how do I show them cases before I've done them? That's the problem. That's the conundrum. Because I can tell you, after almost 30 years in private practice, I can open up my photo book so I can go to my computer and pull up, just name the scenario. I've done it at this point, for crying out loud, you know? So I can actually show the patients my own case and say, here, this is what I did for this patient. This is what I did in this case. So how do you get there? Well, number one, start taking photos. How many of you take photos of your patients on a regular basis? I walk around with a camera sometimes, right? How many of you have a real camera? Not an iPhone, like a real camera. Don't be afraid to admit it. You have one? Yeah, you geek. So do I. Make sure your camera is wireless. Put a wireless card in it. Because the one thing that annoys the crap out of me is paperwork and extra work. I can't stand opening up, taking the SD card, plugging into the computer, opening it, whatever. I don't like doing it. I take a picture, I go on my computer screen. The old iFi system, it would automatically do it. Now Canon wants you to hit a little icon. Fine. I hit an icon, the pictures go right in. I can immediately show the patient what it is. 3D Predict uses a smile simulator, and there's other companies obviously that do this on the market as well, but if you're going to do ortho with them, it kind of makes sense to do that. They'll do this for you. Here's another trend. How many of you want to be dental technicians? How many of you like to do technical work? One person, no? How many of you like to wax up? You know, do the work. I think the only moron that likes waxing up is me. And then I liked it for the first 2 weeks. And after that, I said, that's it, I'm done. Okay? For the life of me, I don't understand why dentists want to learn how to use all the AutoCAD and all these programs and all these things. I don't want to do it. I love getting online with my technician, sitting back and telling him, Travis, I need you to do this, 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 this. Within 3 seconds, the tooth is where I want it. There's no way that I can click as fast. Number one, I'm old. So it doesn't matter how techie I am, and I'm tech savvy. I'm a very, very heavy technology user. But you should see my young ladies when they click on the screen, and I'm like, can you post this thing on Instagram for me? And I have no idea where to push on this. I can take the phone apart and put it together, but I don't know where to push. And they're like, click, click, click. Oh, wow. Okay, just do it for me. The one thing that I love is using the correct people to do the work. So far, my experience with the 3D Predict has been wonderful. I just call up my tech there. I said, do this, 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 and it's done for me, and I don't have to worry about it. And I just look at it, 24 hours later or 12 hours later, and it's there. So learn how to ask for what you want. And at that point, you can call up and you say, well, I want a little bit of a wider buccal corridor. I want the teeth longer, shorter, etc. Based on the photo, you can get that. And if you show this to the patient, obviously it'll make your life easy. I personally like to show them pictures of similar situations. The only problem is that you have to remember who you did what on. So if you remember, fine. If you're like me, sometimes I'll stop. I'll call my assistant who's been with me for over 5 years and I say, okay, who did we do this on? And she goes, that one. Yeah, I'm like, okay, good. Set up your clinical preferences when you go with 3D. And what I do is IPR, I can start on the first stage, is fine. But you see this? My attachments are placed on the second stage. Oh, oh yeah. Thank you. You see? Place attachments on the second stage. That is one of the biggest advice points that I can give you that make your life really, really easy. And your patients will love you for it. They won't know what they will love you, but they will love you because they don't know. The cost of regret is immeasurable. They don't know what it feels like to sit there and try it the first time. Because by the second stage, when I put the attachments on, they already did it. They already know what to do. I tell them, okay, it's going to be a little bit harder to get on and off, whatever. The other thing is, take a look at the case. If you're doing a lot of tipping, you're not going to have a line of draw. You're not going to have a comfortable line of draw. So sometimes the second stage is too early. Maybe sometimes a little tipping or to a point where you can actually draw the trays more comfortably. And then fourth tray, is it fourth? You see? What would I do without you? So even fourth. So try and delay the attachments. And wait, I got to go back now because this. See what it says on the bottom? And I started doing this a little bit later in my orthodontic career because I realized this is foolish. Why am I keeping my patients in attachments when I can take it off, finish, especially if we're done with the upper arch or we're done with the anterior attachments, take it off. They're going to be so happy. You know what people do when they're happy? Smile. You know what shopping therapy is? They'll pay your bill when they're happy. And that's another pearl of practice management. If you look at number of refinements, etc., I don't have we done? Oh no, I know we done one case with refinements, but that was hard. I'm uprighting molars. If I showed you what I'm trying to do, I don't know if we even can, but got to be ambitious. But generally, there's no refinements. You get to where you want and you're done. And it's much easier because the system works really well. The problem with aligners that are soft, what happened was that Invisalign kept changing their formulation because as soon as the patents ran out, they had to distinguish themselves from the crowd because all of a sudden there's all these companies that are making aligners. So now they started making aligners that are softer, they're more comfortable, right? Well, now instead of wearing every 2 weeks, we got to wear them every 1 week because we move faster. No, it's not. It's the same algorithm. Body doesn't change. The reason we have to do it for a week is because by the time the week passes, that aligner is destroyed. You're nodding your head. You had that experience. Yeah, every 3 days. Yeah. But think about it for a second. So if you're dealing with a really soft aligner, how much movement are you getting? So the one thing that I do like about 3D printing, the aligners are solid and something that I didn't understand before, but when they extend beyond the gingival margin, you're getting a lot of force. That's why we can do it faster. That's why we can get a result. That's why, where's my doctor there with the healthier question? That's why you actually get a healthier situation. One more tip. You guys bleach your patient's teeth, right? I learned this a long time ago when I just started using aligners. In my office, tooth whitening is included with your ortho. Because the truth is, we buy the opalescence or the core, we buy that bulk, right? It's not that expensive for crying out loud. Every time my patient wants to whiten their teeth when they're doing ortho, they're welcome to get a couple of tubes and give them whatever percent you feel is comfortable for them. And you will see a wonderful result. First of all, it's another win because the teeth are whiter. And second, what's in the bleaching solution? Peroxide. The oral hygiene will improve. Healthier. There is no downside to orthodontics. I can't figure out a downside at all. It's worth every penny. So that's what it is. Again, the revenue numbers are kind of adjusted. I mean, this is just based on numbers from 2022. But think about it for a second. The less you see the patient, the more money you're making. So if you're looking at from that aspect, it's great. I never look at it. I know that it takes me an extra amount of time. If I have to see the patient extra time, I'm fine. The only thing I don't like is just sitting there for 10 times over and redoing and redoing. There's a reason why people don't want to do partial dentures anymore. You charge $20 for the partial denture and the patient comes back 44 times. It's easier to place an implant. I'm ready to give you the implants for free. Just stop nagging me. So even compared to, look, my practice is prosthodontics and implant surgery of Manhattan, okay? That's what I'm doing. I'm doing pros and implants. But if you look at the revenue, as far as the ortho is concerned, and as far as the difficulty of the job, you know what? Ortho wins. And I want to sell, quote unquote, ortho to every patient, but I don't have to sell them. I have to explain to them that when they come in to get their teeth cleaned and the lower teeth have harder that they can't remove. And instead of having contact points, we have contact planes of the roots. And they're beginning to ask me, well, what happens when I'm 60? Is this going to be okay? I said, well, chances are we're going to lose those teeth. It sells itself. But I think we're done. Is this it? Yeah, this is it. So any questions? Scan away. They either were like so good. Thank you. Yes.
No impressions, but can you
Hold
use
on.
iTero for
Repeat
this?
it, I think, because we're recording for online. So go ahead.
Can you use iTero for this, or what do you use to scan?
So here's the kicker here. All right. I personally use 3Shape. That's what's in my office. I started with 3Shape because most prosthodontists I know are on 3Shape. There was a study a couple years back that compared all the systems. They said 3Shape has the best accuracy, etc. The laboratory standard is on 3Shape. That's why Strawman acquired them. I even have the laboratory software. I bought it for tax deduction at the end of the year a couple of years ago. Ask me how many times I used it. Okay, I don't want to be a technician. I thought I was going to sit there and manipulate things, and then I said, this is really foolish. It's easier for me to pick up the phone and call my technician. iTero was bought by Invisalign. So for me to do Invisalign at this point, I have to do one of two things. Either take a PDS impression, which is fine, I can do it. God knows I did it for the first 20 years of my career. Ask me if I want to. No. No desire whatsoever. So the magic about 3D Predict is they said, hey, we are not here to sell scanners. We are here to sell the work. We're here to sell our system that is AI driven, that can give you a really amazing result. So we don't care what you send us. So if you want to send them an impression, go for it. If you want to send them an iTero scan, you can. Just gotta make sure I'm not lying. You can get an iTero. If you want, you can send them a 3Shape. It doesn't really matter. That's the one thing that I love open systems. I don't like closed systems. I like to be able to use whatever I want. I mean, even the phones. I have a Samsung phone on me. It's the foldable one, the little one. As soon as they screw up and there's a company that makes a better product, I'm gonna go to that. I don't like being locked into one. That's the one thing that I absolutely love about 3. If you ask what is the thing that I love the most, it's an open system. If I buy an iTero tomorrow, we can use it with an iTero.
Yeah, I just want to add that we're fully integrated with education. So we have direct people directly from there. You don't have to pay too much.
Yeah.
And also, I want to take a chance to answer you one compare you.
I'm standing.
So you asked about if you take into consideration the variable state of the patient. Okay? What I love about you today is that we are fully honest with the doctors. I have had issues with cases where I have had to tell the doctors, this is really not the stage you want to create in this patient. You are going to cause the disease. Now, we can't dictate treatment. We would never dictate treatment because you are the captain. We are basically left, right? But we will let you know because we don't know what your treatment plans are afterwards. Maybe you're going to do very good. Maybe you're working on very well. But we will let you know the red flags when it happens. Okay? So when you have a failure situation, we will let you know from the beginning, hey, this patient has failure. Do you really want this school? And you will let us know. Yes. Also, if it is an administration, I will take it. So we will always give you the
Incidentally, when it comes to that, look, it's very easy for us as dentists to blame the lab, right? And as a prosthodontist, I can tell you that a lot of times I'm the bottom line guy for my referring dentist. I have people that call up and say, well, what would you do in this case? I don't mind answering that. But when, especially with implants, I get dentists that call me up and said, well, yeah, there's an implant abutment. I don't know what company it is. Take a look at the x-ray. Can you tell me, maybe you have the screwdriver for it? So if it's somebody that I work with all the time, you know what I do? I look it up and I give them the screwdriver and I support them and I help them because that's my referring base. But let's turn this around for a second and let's put ourselves as the patient in the chair. Now, the patient came to the doctor and the doctor is calling their friend to ask the advice. So remember in dental school, they told you, call the lab, they'll tell you how to do it. Be a patient for a second. You're coming to the dentist. The dentist doesn't know what to do and has to call the lab. Why are you going to the dentist? Of course they don't know it. But here's the thing. I mean, there's a higher calling. You're also supposed to do no harm. You're still a physician for that person. You're still a doctor. I know they say, well, dentists are not doctors. I don't know. Last I checked, it said doctor in front of my name, which means I have some sort of a responsibility, not financially, but to just a bit of a higher call. So I personally recommend if you're going to do this, get some training in orthodontics. Get it anywhere you want. It doesn't matter. There's courses that are given by a company. Like this course is designed to show you what the system can do. It's not an orthodontic course. I'm not going to teach you orthodontics. Okay? I'm going to show you what I do with the system. And at that point, you're going to make up your mind and you're going to say to yourself, well, you know what? I have a similar case. I don't want to do it. Let me call Zev and he'll do it. Or you're going to say, oh, wow, I just saw that and he did it. I want to do it, which is fine. At that point, I'll be absolutely more than happy to answer your question and have you go through it. But the truth is you owe it to your patient to actually go and learn a little bit of orthodontics in order to do this. And don't bite more than you can chew. Obviously, you're not going to jump and do like that case that I got from, was it Florida? They sent them. Sasha, was that from Florida patient? The one that, I mean, it's like scary. I looked at it and I said, I don't know if I want to tackle this. And I'm ambitious. You know, So know your limits. When you start with, for those of you who, show of hands, how many of you don't do orthodontics in your practice at all? Okay. Is it something that you're considering doing? You should, you must. I'm not even waiting for your answer. You have to. Because think about it statistically, okay? There's, I think, 6.5% of dentists are orthodontists, something like this. They're like about 6%. What are all the other patients doing? They gotta go somewhere, okay?
Consumer.
And not only that, look, it's the same thing as implant dentistry. 2.2% of dentists are prosthodontists. 6% are periodontists. Where are all the other, and how many oral surgeons? About 6% also, right? Yeah. Where are the other patients going to? Where are the patients going that can't afford our Park Avenue fees? They should be able to go somewhere. Okay? God bless those dentists that have to work at lower fees and insurance reimbursement. God bless them. I don't want to do their work, but they do. They have to, and they provide the care to their. That's a wonderful thing. So why not offer this to your patients? Why not give the patients that want to do this? And I promise you, if you show this to your patients, and your hygienist is the #1 person to do that because they'll buy from the hygienist better than from you. The hygienist will say, you know, every time you come back, it's so hard for me to clean here. Why don't you have Dr. X straighten out your teeth? There you go. Here's a sold case. And if you do it with a company that's conscientious, they'll help you. And all of a sudden, your patient got the service. You got another treatment that is fairly easy and simple for you from a technical standpoint to do. All you have to do is monitor and make sure the patient doesn't go awry. And you get the hygiene in between, and you get a happy patient. There's no downside to this. I can't figure it out why everybody is not being quote unquote sold on this. I think all your patients should. Anything else? Any more? I couldn't have been any more passionate about this at this point. Right?
Do we have any other questions?
Thank you so much for attending tonight. We can stick around for a little longer and for drinks and some social time. We will help chat with you instead of lunch learn from your office. You know, so you get your assistance and hygiene board. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Any technical questions, all-around questions, AI questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you so much.
Go.
We would love to take a picture with all of you before we get out.
Yeah, feel free to come and take a picture with us. Gosh, sorry, Zabiriyata. Somebody knocks this off.